Minasan, welcome back to our playthrough of Our Life, Beginning and Always. We are finishing step 2 today. We did every single moment, all the DLC, all the normal. You guys have experienced it all, and you have seen our journey with our version of Cove. And now we shall continue on and leave this gorgeous summer behind us as we continue on our life to the next step. Let's go. There was no denying it. Today was the very last day of summer. Tomorrow you were headed back to class. Anxiety gnawed at your stomach. Going back to school meant handing over the I hate saying words because I think I'm going to keep saying them wrong. Anonymity that you had over the past weeks. You had very little control over what you did at school or who you shared a class with. It was with a heavy heart that you chose your outfit for your final day of freedom. Life was going to be different. You had come to think of the summer vacation as the norm, but school sucked up the majority of the year, whereas the summer vacation was just a reprise in the middle. So rather than being different, it was kind of a return to normal. What did your normal life really mean? You considered how fondly your moms talked about their summer vacations as kids. You dimly recognized that 1 year in the pattern of school and summer itself would be over for good. It was hard to imagine. You'd gotten distracted, one arm still out of a sleeve. You pulled through and your mind back to the present. This season had brought about plenty changes of its own, like Kyra's visit, though that too was coming to an end today. She was interesting to be around. You liked how easy it was to talk to her. You finished dressing, which was good. Cove would be there any moment. You'd agreed to see his mom off together. Officially, there was a plan that he would come over to bring you round to his house when she was ready to set off. But you both knew you'd be hanging out for at least a little while before that. Kyra's visit had troubled Cove when it first happened. It had been a sudden change thanks to Mr. Holden's infamous tendency to surprise people, but once he was able to adjust, he'd been in pretty good spirits with her around. It was a relief to everyone. You turned to your desk where the box containing your accessories rested. A thought struck you like a bolt, and your eyes bored into the box. Should you wear an anklet for Cove's visit today? You had some nice ones that you hadn't used in a while. You're gonna do it. Your heart pounded as you slipped the hoop through the clasp and fastened it in place. Would Cove spot it? Your face grew hot as you imagined how he might react. Da-da-da-dance, da-da-dance. Oh, the next thought that crossed through your mind was, oh, we're good. I can't wait to see Cove, so we're gonna go see him the minute he arrives. You bounded down the stairs, your hand gliding over the rail. You wanted to make sure you got there first. If you didn't hurry, your moms might answer it. It was only a few moments later when the doorbell rang and you chose to stand beside it to wait for Cove. There was no delay in pulling it open. Cove was there just as you expected. Seeing you, he smiled quietly.
Hey.
It took you long enough? I only live across the street. You stuck your tongue out at him as you ushered him inside, then bustled him up the stairs. Back up in your room, you sat down on your bed and waited for Cove to settle in as you knew he would. With other guests, you might have offered them a seat, but you and Cove were long past those tentative stages of friendship. Your room was as familiar to him as his own. You watched as Cove sat down in your desk chair. He preferred the spot. He rolled it closer to the bed to make it easier to chat, tweaking the angle so that he was facing you fully. Once happy with the position, he leaned in towards you, hands held in his lap. His actions weren't the ones of someone who had planned on moving from his spot anytime soon, even though you had an appointment to keep together that day. When's your mom leaving?
Don't worry about it.
We've got some time. She's still got a shower and stuff before she goes. She didn't want me to just keep hanging around while she was doing that. He lifted his head, his gaze drifting out towards the window, and chuckled. I can't believe she's already leaving. Just when I'm getting used to her being there every day. He leaned back in the chair, a wry smile tickling his cheeks. She'll be back. He cocked his head thoughtfully before shrugging. He ran a hand through his hair before shaking his head as if shaking off the topic like a dog whipping off water following a dip in the sea. Cove looked back at you, lips parted as if he was about to speak, But instead, his eyes widened, his mouth closed into a tiny frown. Something had caught his attention. Something wrapped around where the end of your leg met your foot. He cast his eyes back up to your face, then down to your ankle, then back to your face. He repeated the process once, twice more, as if struggling to hold the two items in tandem. Maybe he was weighing up whether this could be a coincidence or not. Or maybe he was just too shy to verbalize his thoughts, or was still trying to find the words, and this was the most he could manage. Oh, he's so adorable! The attention made you feel, I am thrilled, I am pleased. The whole plan was for him to see you in it, and you'd succeeded. While his attention was still divided between your ankle and your face, it was totally on you. His next glance back at your face, Cove saw your expression had shifted. You watched as his bewilderment eroded into mortification as he realized he'd been caught staring. He quickly spun in the chair to face the wall instead, allowing you a glimpse of the flush that had spread all the way down to his ears. Oh, Cove, I love you. You're not a bad boy. You're a good boy. He twisted in his seat, wringing his hands, and determinedly avoided looking in your direction again. It seemed he had decided against saying anything at all. Does it look good? Cove mumbled something unintelligible as he slumped lower. With how he was hunched over, the quiet words had no chance of reaching you. You weren't gonna get anything out of him in this state. You waited for him to come around before speaking again. Finally, he piped up very softly.
That's,
You do that because of what I said before? I mean, you know. The last few words were whispered as though they were a precious secret. The ankle bracelet? Maybe or yes? Yes. His eyes squeezed shut. You had no idea if the answer made him feel better or more nervous. He eventually looked down at his lap where his fingers were flexing and curling in an awkward dance of nerves. His chest rose as he breathed deep. Well, it looks good on you. Your heart skittered in your chest like a stone skipping across the water. One big leap from the unexpected compliment followed by a series of shorter ones as you absorbed the words. You beamed at him. He was looking at you again at last and returned the smile shyly. This really couldn't have worked out better, you thought. And there was nothing else he could add after that. Cove's posture teetered, his eyelids blinking quickly. Blue, I actually kind of wanted to talk about... He drew a deep breath before concluding the sentence. What happened on the trip? His voice shook as he pushed out the words out. Your eyes grew at the reaction. Cove pulled his arms around his chest, his shoulders hunching inward. You knew what he was implying, back when you'd been in the loft and nearly kissed. Cove hadn't breathed a word about it since it happened, or well, almost happened.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry for moving away like I did when you tried to. He dropped the sentence. You didn't push for him to finish. It had conveyed what it had needed. And I'm sorry for how I've been since, acting like it didn't even happen. I've thought about it. I mean, I haven't forgotten about it. I don't keep thinking about it all the time. He hung his red-cheeked head, forehead propped up by the couple of fingers. You could tell that he was already regretting how this was going.
Sorry.
Sorry for being weird. It's just... I kind of thought or hoped that sometime I'd be able to do this with me talking about... everything. Everything? There's more? He nodded ever so slightly. Your face felt a lot hotter after that. Cove brightened a little at your positive reaction. And his explanation continued. I could sort of picture how it might go. What it might be like with you and me. But just the first part. I couldn't ever imagine anything that come after. And now it's actually happened. And we're there. He took another deep breath, stuttering on the exhale.
It
makes things different. Things don't have to be different? Should we find a crystal ball for answers? Not what I meant to do. He gave you a wan smile. Thanks, but I don't think that'll work. I can't just forget. I definitely can't. His wide eyes met yours as he looked at you, less burdened from the anxiety that had built inside him. How about a do-over? Do you want to try again? Do-over, try again. Do-over, try again. Let's go do-over. No. Oh, whoa! Cove! The words shot out reflexively. He couldn't help it, but immediately cringed at himself. Do you really mean that? No. I mean, I do want to. I want to try again, if you still wanna. You untangled yourself from the resting position and stood up, realizing your intent to actually go for it. Cove straightened up in the chair, his hands coiled together in his lap. As you moved towards him, you noticed his knee knocking together as he trembled. His decision not to rise from the chair made perfect sense. If he was that shaky while sitting down, there was no way he'd manage to stand without at least one of you falling over. Your legs brushed against his quivering ones as you came in to stop in front of him. Cove was staring up at you, and you leaned in towards him. He echoed the motion and drew in towards you. Once you were close enough to feel Cove's breath on your face, you closed your eyes. The last thing you saw was Cove quickly doing the same. Your lips met with Cove's for a moment. His lips were pressed tightly together, unyielding, but it was all right. You were kissing him, and he was kissing you. Your stomach somersaulted. You couldn't believe it was really happening. In that moment, it felt warm, it felt nice, it felt right. You drew back and Cove slipped down into the chair, the knuckles of his hands pale after gripping so tightly. Thinking that he could do with some space to breathe, figuratively and literally, you took a step back. Cove shot up, his stance rigid. Oh, baby boy! Why are you holding your mouth? Baby boy, why are you holding your mouth? Was it that bad? Cove plastered a hand over his mouth, his eyes shut tight, his back then became bowed, shrinking him down. You could only just make out a few words that he managed to summon.
Oh my god!
I can't believe we actually... His eyes flew wide, but he didn't look your way, let alone meet your gaze.
Oh my god!
We kissed! We kissed! Blinking, you tried to process what had happened. You laid a hand on your cheek, half wondering about pinching yourself to check that this wasn't a dream. You found your skin as hot as a car door in the noon on a summer day. Cove only slammed his eyes closed once again. Was it that bad? He was still holding a hand to his face, but in an attempt to answer, he emitted a muffled whimper. With that obviously not working, he uncovered his face at last, bringing the hand to lay against his chest and looked at you. No. He opened his mouth, poised to speak, and pursed his lips as words failed him. On his third or fourth attempt, you heard what he had to say. I did like it. I'm glad that we, He swallowed, seemingly not able to speak the actual word. That we what? I have no idea, my dear boy. Blue? Your earlier anxiety ebbed, knowing that the experience had been a welcome one. The smile on Cove's face was real, but wary, not unlike the one he wore after a long and exhausting day of activity. Like when he made a new personal best. The work had been hard, but the reward had been worth it. With some newfound confidence, he drew himself up as he inhaled deeply. Each word he spoke next was delicate. Blue, I like you. A lot. Probably way too much. He ducked his head bashfully and opened an eye, peeking at you through the hair that had fallen over his face like a veil. He managed to smile.
Thanks for waiting for me.
Oh, baby boy, I'd wait a lifetime for you. His eyes sparkled just looking at you, and his affection transparently clear. He never could hide what he was feeling, and you couldn't be more grateful for that day. I like you too. Cove squeaked out a nervous giggle. He curled his hand into a loose fist and brushed the knuckles idly against his cheek. Words evaded him as he opened his mouth and closed it again. I don't... He gave up on finishing the sentence, instead of just smiling again. He rubbed his eyes with the heel of his hand, and the action usually reserved for much later in the day, but at this point it already felt like a long day. Cove then pressed a hand to his creased forehead.
Oh my god.
Does this mean I'm your boyfriend or something now? Should we tell our parents? I don't know what Dad or Mom would do. There were a lot of concerns in there. You honed in on the simplest. There was no way your moms would let you have a boyfriend. Even though the word juxtaposed with Cove's name made your heart race. They let you go on a date with him. I don't think they would mind. Like, really? They literally allowed me to say that it was a date for the soiree. So, a date kind of implies that there might be more than that. And I just... feels a little awkward that they wouldn't let me just say boyfriend automatically. I want you to be at least something, but I probably can't. It doesn't matter though. Nothing anybody else thought about your relationship changed what was between the two of you. Cove lifted his hand from his chest and reached towards you, halting halfway, then slowly, cautiously hooked his fingers around yours, his palm pressed against the back of your hand. Where I'm holding it back, you rotated your hands so you were palm to palm with Cove, your thumb crossing one another. We can get it to work. We always figure things out sooner or later. You were temporarily struck speechless, your usual directness punctured by his honest belief in what you had together. Yeah, you're right. We're a pretty good team. Chuckling, Cove smiled at you and tightened his grip on your hand. Blue, Cove! The sudden call from downstairs caught you both unaware. You'd nearly forgotten the world outside your room. From the guilty look on his face, Cove had done the same. I just had a call. Cove's mom is ready to go. If you're quick, she might keep the mandated motherly smothering to a minimum. You doubted that, but it was nice that Mom and Miss Priest had their strange sense of humor in common. Your eyes met Cove's. Wordlessly, you headed downstairs together. Each step on the way there was painfully slow, like he was trying to delay the inevitable. His whole body tense leaving the house, and Cove froze altogether before you could cross the street.
Oh.
The door's open. Dad must be taking her stuff out. He swallowed hard. She's really gonna leave. He rested the hand on his arm. You felt a small shiver ripple through his body as the warmth of your hand sank in. It'll be okay, you can do this. He looked at you uncertainly, and you gently squeezed his arm for support. At that, some of the conflict warring in his face eased a bit. Together, you went across the street inside his house, finding his parents in the living room, surrounded by his mom's packed things. Hey, kids! Good timing! I just called the taxi!
Hi.
Oh, and hi, Blue! So glad I get to see you today. It was fabulous getting to know you this summer. I finally got to put a face to the name I've heard so many times. She winked and Cove pouted on cue over the teasing. I'm really happy I got to meet you too. Hopefully it won't be too long before we see each other again. Nodding, Kyra turned her attention back to her boys. She patted Cliff on the arm with a warm smile, then she enveloped Cove in a crushing hug. Initially, Cove squirmed to break free from her grip, but his mom was unfazed and kept him locked in place. Heartbeats later, he gave in and hugged her back tightly. Aw, Cove. I'll love your mom while she's here.
I'm so glad.
I'm so happy this trip was a success. Cliff looked like he was bursting with pride. And then Cove stiffened. Kyra loosened her hold on him enough to study his face, concerned. She spoke her next words in a whisper that had been just meant for her son.
What do you think?
Did you want to unshelve it? Raising an eyebrow, Cliff watched them carefully. His smile began to falter.
What's wrong?
Yeah, what's wrong? Cove sighed, and his gaze flickered over to you for a moment, then just as quick went back to his parents.
It's okay.
It's alright.
Really?
Are you sure? I don't want to do it now. I can tell Dad later. Nervously, you watched the exchange with growing suspicion that Cove didn't want to have the conversation while you were there. You wondered if you should offer to leave while Kyra gave Cove a pat on the head.
All right.
You can always call me if you want me to be part of the conversation, okay? I'll call. Thanks, Mom. Cliff still looked baffled at what Kyra and Clove were referring to, but you watched as his shoulders slowly relaxed. You figured that he decided to wait for Cove to be ready to talk to him. And with Cliff's silence on things seemed to be settled for now. After that, it wasn't long before the taxi arrived, rolling up in front of the house in a clear view of the open door. Kyra stood up, smiling sadly.
Well,
That's my ride. Yeah. The matching reply got a chuckle out of Kyra, and you filed out of the house. Father and son went with Kyra's bags in hand. Once outside, you spy your family waiting by the street, and to your surprise, Derek was also with them. He stood uncomfortably, and he waved as soon as you noticed him.
what's up?
Hey, Blue. Hey, Cove. I did his voice wrong. I'm sorry. My throat is like just saying, you're done doing boy voices for the day. When did you get here? My dad dropped me off just a little bit ago. Thought I could visit one more time before school started. I'm still doing his voice wrong. I can't hit it right now.
Sorry.
You picked a busy time. Sorry. Derek couldn't even look at Cove. He nervously kept rolling a pebble with the bottom of his shoe.
Sorry.
I wasn't even thinking your mom would be leaving today. I'm sorry. What? You're not interrupting anything. You're always welcome here. It would have been sad if I didn't get to say goodbye before leaving. I think so too. It was apparent Derek would have preferred to have gotten there at a more opportune moment. He never liked seeming impolite, but the reassuring words soothed his worries. The tension he was holding in his body lessened, and he looked like he was feeling much more like himself. Bye, Derek. It was fun getting to know you. Bye, ma'am. Is there anything I can do to help?
Nah.
Yeah, don't worry yourself over that. We're just about set. In that short amount of time, Cliff had gathered and packed the bags into the trunk. Kyra took one last look at everyone inside. All right, I don't want to keep the driver waiting. It's time to head out. The little crowd had formed around, started their chorus of farewells and well wishes traveling. But Kyra still made no move to get into the taxi. She placed her attention on Cove. I'll call when I get to the airport and when I make it to Nevada. Also, you better call the moment you walk in the door at home. Otherwise, I'll be wondering all night if you got in trouble on the way there.
Can do.
I can do that. And could you call tomorrow, too, so I can tell you how school went? Of course! I want to hear all about it! Kyra put a hand on Cove's head and affectionately rubbed his hair one last time. She then let go, only to move into squeezing his cheeks in her hands instead. Mom!
Cove.
I love you so much, baby! She was chuckling by the time she freed him and rounded things off with a small tap to the tip of his nose. Cove rubbed his face with a grin. Finally, she walked into the car while waving and took her seat in the taxi. Cliff hooked an arm around Cove's shoulder and kept him close as it began to pull away. For a moment, Cove looked up at his dad, then wrapped an arm across his back.
Bye.
Bye, Mom. Bye, safe travels. Kyra rolled down the window and stuck her head out. She waved again while blowing kisses at Cove and Cliff. See you again! Before she was out of sight, you decided to... You added your voice to the others as you watched Kyra's smile grow larger. The cab turned down another road and completely disappeared from view. Cove let go of his dad and took a few steps out into the empty street, still looking in the direction his mom went. He smiled quietly, deep in thought. You got the impression Cove was feeling better than he was earlier. He was finally content with the way things were. The summer breeze brought a sweet-sounding jingle across the way. It was the wind chime you had given Cove. He had hung it from the front of his house, and it had become a very familiar sound in the neighborhood. You jumped a bit when your mom put a hand on your shoulder, pulling you away from your thoughts. She smiled when you looked at her. This was a great vacation, huh? Summer isn't over until the second I fall asleep. No naps for you then. Can't risk you accidentally ending summer a few hours too early for the rest of us. Chuckling, you shook your head amused. Cove walked over to the group, still genuinely happy. Derek grinned at him welcomely, and everyone else there smiled at him, even Elizabeth.
Well,
Ma clapped her hands together, bringing everyone's attention back to the present. It's almost time for lunch. I think I'll put something special together. Her eyes sparkled with a plan, and Mom smiled. I bet we could use some help with that. That'd be absolutely wonderful. Derek glanced between the two, his eyebrows furrowed. Is there something I can do? Your moms exchanged a fond expression. Ma shook her head.
how sweet.
That's very sweet, Derek, but it's all right. It's not your job. Technically, your dad left you under Cliff's watch. You're meant to be taken care of by him, not doing chores for the neighbors. Mom laughed a little over her own joke. You watched Derek look away, discouraged.
It's okay.
I don't mind. He was a little bashful about it. You wondered if Mom's joke had just reminded him he wasn't initially meant to be invited to lunch. It was getting a little awkward. Mom grinned sympathetically. Her comment was meant to lighten the mood, not bring it back down. Why don't you kids go have fun? You can all come back in about an hour. We'll have enough for everyone. Mom nodded in agreement.
Sounds good.
Another stunning idea, Lonnie. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That sounds like a plan then. I don't want to cramp your style. I got some stuff to work on, so I'll be out of your hair this afternoon. You should come by later too. No reason you should be the odd man out. Mom seemed amused as Cliff rubbed his neck nervously. He grinned a wavering but pleased smile.
Thanks very much.
I appreciate the invite. He looked over to the assembled crowd and with knowing glances. I can help out too with as many people as you're feeding. That's gonna be a lot of food. Didn't we hear what we told Derek? It wouldn't be fair to make you cook when we're the ones who are inviting you in. Ma raised an eyebrow when Cliff waved it off.
Come on.
I insist. Derek would be missing time with his pals. This would be a break for me. I'm quite the chef. Ma and Mom exchanged further glances before Mom shrugged.
True.
An airtight argument. If you're sure, we'll be happy to have you, Cliff. Chef Cliff. Cliff's grin widened and seemed more hyped than you'd expect him about helping with lunch. Cove shook his head, a fond smile on his face. Then all of us grown-up people will be heading inside. I assume the rest of you kiddos will be staying out? Maybe not all of them. Ma tilted her head, a silent question for Elizabeth. Your sister thought for a moment.
All right.
I'll stay with the kids.
That's fantastic.
That's great. Both your moms smiled at her, while Derek and Cove didn't seem to appreciate her phrasing. But with the plan decided, all three parents waved and headed for your house. It was just you teenagers now. Elizabeth looked at you and the others, a curious expression on her face.
So?
What now? You silently wondered if Elizabeth only stayed out with you to avoid getting roped into work. Then again, she could just genuinely want to hang out. You couldn't tell with your sister. Cove spoke up after no one else did to answer Elizabeth's question. Want to go down to the shopping district? It's been a while and I don't think there's a lot of other things we could agree on. Yeah, sure.
Awesome.
Sounds awesome to me. Unlike you guys, I haven't been there in 1,001 times. It's new to me. Let's do it! You strolled across the road as a group, down the beach, and then to the left. It took less than 15 minutes to arrive, one of the conveniences of Sunset Bird. The four of you looked around the familiar shops, trying to see if anything caught your attention this time. Derek was the most enthusiastic. He checked out every stall with his eyes wide with wonder. Elizabeth and Cove were in good spirits as well. That's so cool! He ran over to a street magician who was currently doing a card trick for the group of enchanted tourists. Derek clapped when the magician showed a middle-aged man his card. Derek turned back to the group with a curious gleam on his face. What does it take to perform here anyway? Do you have to ask somebody, or do you just show up and start doing stuff? Who do you even ask? It's a public street. Hey, Miss Mayor, can I pull a rabbit out of my hat? Please, Flopsy is well behaved, I promise. Ah! Derek chuckled, his eyes searching up and down the scene. Maybe there's a boss of the shopping street? No one does anything around my neighborhood. It's just regular stores behind walls. It's different if someone wants a real store, but here, I'm pretty sure the people are just putting on their little shows wherever they want to do whatever. That's so neat. Would we be allowed to do something too? Cove laughed and Derek began almost vibrating with excitement. Elizabeth rolled her eyes. What could we do? Well, I don't know what, not yet. I mean, I just found out it's a possibility, you know? But there's gotta be something. We know cool stuff. I'm sure if we think about it, we could plan a show that really get the crowd pumped. Derek continued to brainstorm aloud about different potential performances while you glanced over at Cove and Elizabeth. I mean, I could bounce a soccer ball on my head. Last time I tried, I got 8 bounces before it fell. I wouldn't bring a ball here.
Why?
Cove gestured up to everything around, the stalls, the people, all the colorful chaos that made up the shopping street. Would you want to chase a lost ball here? And what if you hit somebody? Even if you're good, someone else could bump into you. That's true. Derek thought about it some more, then he watched another performer, a woman doing tricks with 2 small dogs. One was fluffy and cream-colored, while the other was a cool gray. The woman held up rings. Both animals jumped through the openings, happy to receive the treats at the end. Derek brightened. Maybe I'll teach crabs how to race. Crabs? It could work. With some amusement, the gang continued to pursue the stall. Elizabeth found some earrings with a dangly, badly misprinted globe that everybody laughed at. Cove picked out a blob of Iceland, but Derek thought it had to be Greenland. You know, this is a world with what looks like 9 continents. I think you're both wrong. Oh, Elizabeth, they're both right. Want to side with Cove or say no, it's Australia? Say no, it's Australia. The other 3 giggled at your interjection. Suddenly, Cove froze. You stared at him, then tried to... Oh my god, the music! Oh god, it's Jeremy, isn't it? When you saw a familiar face down the way, it all made sense. Between the crowds, his bright hair stood out like a neon green bowl in a kitchen sink. It was Jeremy. Jeremy slowly drifted his eyes down the street, and his eyes widened in mutual recognition. He definitely noticed you. Derek frowned. Cove tensed up. You couldn't help but remember the last time you'd seen Jeremy at Miranda's birthday party. No wonder Cove was already defensive. That smile. He just looked dismissive. Elizabeth raised an eyebrow. Her gaze swept over Jeremy without a hint or clue. Jeremy simply scoffed to himself and waded deeper into the crowd of people. Derek relaxed and exhaled loudly. I'm glad he's not going to start anything. He peeked over at Elizabeth with a tiny smirk. See? That was the mean kid.
What?
Huh? She still didn't get it. That first summer day hadn't made nearly as much of an impression on her as it did for Derek, but he smiled and waved it off. Just forget about him. I already have. He laughed, and Cove smiled lightly. He seemed in a much better mood now that Jeremy was gone. Your eyes wandered over to where Jeremy disappeared. You hadn't forgotten the day you met him either. He was only going to be in town for a vacation with his parents he hated. That glimpse was probably the last time you would ever see him. I'll be back. Blue? I won't be long. You headed off after Jeremy, cutting into the crowd he disappeared into. It didn't take long till you spied his distinct figure. You caught up with him, ducking between a tourist couple and sidestepping into the side of the street he wandered into. You took a breath. Jeremy? Jeremy's slouch posture stiffened, and his neck turned to look over his shoulder, his scowl deepening when he saw it was you. What now? He glowered at you tersely, and a silence stretched between you. He wasn't going to say anything more. You're not going to be here much longer, are you? Oh, that's right. I'm amazed a pea-brain like you could figure that out without having me spell it out. So what? I'm leaving in a few days. School starts next week. It's not like I can live here and what? Teleport to class? I know we didn't really get along, but I just wanted to say sorry. I didn't have to do that. Jeremy's face scrunched up. Saying that is pointless. Ugh, annoying. He stomped off into the crowd, vanishing into the sea of other tourists. When you couldn't see him anymore, you shook her head. That was it then. You turned around and saw Cove, Derek, and your sister shuffling through the crowd. Derek saw you and ran forward, the other two following close. Are you alright? It was a little weird, but yeah, I'm fine. Thanks for asking, Derek. Jeremy's definitely leaving. He'll be gone in a few days.
So what?
Okay, who cares about the kid? Cove shrugged as in a she has a point kind of way. You nodded. There wasn't anything else to do about it now. Jeremy was unlike anyone you had ever met before. You and the group moved on from the stall and from Jeremy. It didn't take long for everyone to return to the joking. You all enjoyed what little time you had left, as Elizabeth mentioned the hour was almost up. The little trip had flown by and lunch must have been waiting for you now. Derek bounced on the balls of his feet. Okay, come on guys, let's get going so we can eat. I'm starving. Onward bound we go. Cove stretched one of his arms lazily. Let's go then. He looked at him appraisingly. I'm gonna give you. Hey, Cove. I'm going to abuse the fact that you like me. Yeah. Carry me home.
What?
Cove turned red, obviously flustered. I want a piggyback ride, and you're the only one big enough to give me one. Cove sighed and shook his head. Elizabeth and Derek became a chorus of laughter. Pretty please! Come on, Cove! You jokingly pleaded with him, much to the continued amusement of the other two. All right. Cove stepped over to you. He looked like he couldn't believe he was doing this. Your lips quirked into a large smile. Woo! I knew you'd come through for me! He carefully crouched down in front of you so that you could climb onto his back. Oh, just climb on. It wasn't hard to hop on. He slipped his arms under your legs and did his best to lift you. It was wobbly, but you managed to stand all the way. Elizabeth watched with a smirk on her face while Derek laughed even harder. It was fair to say that your antics were entertaining. You were glad Cove went with it. Cove carried you home. He seemed pretty bashful about the situation. He struggled with how much of a grip around you, whether or not he should try to reposition things. Oh, Cove, don't try to reposition. But along with it, he also seemed to feel some pride to be carrying you. It was a pleasant walk home, and in no time you had made it back. Derek got to the front door and held it open for everyone as you each moseyed inside. The three parents were still in the kitchen. They looked up and waved. Welcome back, everyone! You made it just in time.
Hey.
I hope you're hungry. When Cove brought you inside, your parents couldn't help but notice the odd conveyance. Your moms were unsure. Mr. Holden raised an eyebrow.
Everything okay?
Do you pull something, Blue? I'm okay. Aw, Cove, you've gotten so strong.
Good.
And reliable, too. What a guy. Cove rolled his eyes at the commentary, then started walking to your couch. He bent down and you let yourself flop back on the couch. Thanks, Cove. I give it a 10 out of 10. Cove exhaled loudly and shook his arms. He just seemed relieved that he made it. So, did everyone have a nice time out? She gestured for people to take a seat at the table. Plates and silverware had already been placed out. You took your normal seat. Elizabeth sat across from you, and Derek took the seat to your left. Cove sat on your right. Then he blushed a little and began fidgeting with his silverware. His dad was the first to pick up on his extra awkwardness. but your moms weren't far behind. The parents shared looks at Cove's reaction. It seemed that he was struggling with how to act normal around his dad or your parents, or both after what happened between the two of you upstairs.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we had a great time. It was fine. Cove shrugged, not willing to say more than that. Yeah, the bank heist went off without a hitch. Your joke got some chuckles going around the table. That's good in my book. Casually, Mr. Holden sat on the empty seat across from Cove. He smiled at you and all the other kids. Mom set down a platter full of water glasses on the table. She looked down at the gathering. It's a good thing we have 8 chairs. I can't remember the last time we had a group this big over for a meal. Can you pass the drinks to the other side? Make sure you all get one? Sure. As you passed Cove his drink, your hands touched. Cove froze. You had hardly let go, yet not realizing that he was too distracted to function in the moment. The glass fell down to the table, landing with a sharp clatter of glass on the wood. Cove scooted his chair back with a restrained shout.
Sorry.
I'll get a towel or something. He looked around in a frantic panic, as if an object to soak up the water would magically appear if he turned his head fast enough. His dad bit his lip, worry rising from his own seat.
Well,
Cove, what's going on? You've been a bit out of it today. Did something... Shut up, parents! Cove tensed, frozen again. He stared at the water on the tabletop, as if he wanted to sink into it. What do we do? I kind of want to cover for Cove, but at the same time, I kind of just want to blurt it out. I want to blurt it out. Let's blurt it out. We kissed! You spit it out without thought. It was silent as everyone processed. Silent. Ha! Both Mom and Mom started to laugh, and that snapped people out of their surprise. Mr. Holden slapped a hand over Cove's shoulder. Congrats! Cove flinched at the touch but still said nothing. His hands might have well been glued to his head. Elizabeth shook her head as you could hear her say, "Can you believe this line in motion?" As we've always said, baby boyfriend. Derek grinned at you and Cove, even if he couldn't see. He was at least happy for you. Now, I'm sure we all knew this was coming sooner or later.
It happens.
I had hoped you could have at least waited a couple more years, but what can you do? Are you gonna let me have my boyfriend before I'm older?
No.
It's a wonderful thing that you both like each other. But Mom is right that you're both young. We'll just have to chaperone you if you want to go on dates.
Nice work.
We're in trouble. I feel like Cove's gonna be so upset that I outed us. Cove creakily fell back in his seat. His hands hadn't moved. While his expression was unreadable, the color of his skin reached an extreme red. He crashed forward, his head smashed into the table surface, somehow curling up even more from his embarrassment. Isn't that still wet? No response was given. At least with his hands there, his face should have been somewhat protected from the water. I'm sorry. Parents laughed more, all 3 of them with wide, beaming grins on their faces. Our families are truly uniting now then. This'll be the Holden Flame clan's first meal together. Or the Flame Holden clan. I'm not sure which has a better ring to it. Derek's eyes were wide as he kept shooting furtive looks at the door. Apparently the grown-ups were making this too much for even him. He seemed to be one of the few people concerned for Cove's impression of the withdrawn, red-eared slider turtle. You good, bro? Derek whispered encouragingly at his flattened friend. Meanwhile, Elizabeth was still unimpressed. Then finally you heard a squeak. It was Cove.
Oh my god.
Please, can we not talk about this anymore, please? I'm sorry. Oh, sure. I think that's enough for now. We've still got to eat lunch after all. Food was placed on the table and Derek started to fill his plate with the others following suit. Cove sighed quietly as lunch started up in earnest. Mr. Holden gave his son another pat on the back. Cove slowly straightened back up, and you helped him get a towel and clean the water dripping everywhere at this point. You caught eyes with him and tried to gauge if he was unhappy with you because of this. Thankfully, he gave no impression of that. The affection he showed back in your room was strong as ever. As everything got set up, Ma chided Elizabeth to take her elbows off the table.
No.
And you shouldn't slouch. She pointed to Mr. Holden, who was leaning forward with both arms on the table. Oops! Mr. Holden seemed unsure about all the sudden attention and carefully rearranged his posture to something suitable for a fancy dinner. He smiled sheepishly at Ma. Elizabeth rolled her eyes and Ma gave a leveled look at her. You shouldn't be impolite to a guest in the house either. Elizabeth groaned, long and long-suffering. Ma giggled and Mr. Holden chuckled.
Not
A
bad.
lot of you could learn a thing or two from Derek. He has the best manners here. Derek blushed, but it was true. His posture was upright and formal. He even held his fork gracefully. His table manners on top of his attempts to aid your parents made him the model of meal attendee behavior.
Aw.
It's nothing. It's true, though. You have been a lovely guest. I've noticed that, too. It's always nice when you stay over, Derek. Derek smiled and sat a little taller in his chair. And do you have anything good to say about our other guests? She looked deliberately at Cove with a teasing smirk. Or is there just nothing to say? Well, Cove is number one, but he does clean his hands by wiping them on his pants. Cove frowned at that and absentmindedly brushed his hands on his pant legs. Your mom laughed lightly.
There.
Elizabeth, you should know, after all these years, Cove is hardly a guest anymore. Cove smiled awkwardly. Thanks. I don't think I'm gonna let the pants thing go. Cove looked over at the window, not wanting to face the truth. Everyone ate their meal together and continued to hang out for the afternoon. After the food, you and the others played a couple of games and talked about plans for the upcoming year. The time passed quickly and soon it was time to part ways. Mr. Holden talked to your moms and Cove drifted over to you, knowing that as soon as his dad finished up, he would be leaving. It'd be cool to stay, but we have some stuff to do before everything closes for the day.
Okay.
Yeah, bye. Can you move? I need the phone. Cove raised an eyebrow and Elizabeth impatiently gestured behind him. Cove realized he was standing right in front of where the receiver was placed. He stepped out of the way and shook his head, clearly thinking Elizabeth was rushing too much. Your sister made a beeline for the phone and started dialing the number of what you figured was one of her friends. Knowing Elizabeth, she was going to be on there for a while. This thing is taking forever! Oh! You, Cove, and Derek shuffled closer to the door. It seemed like Mr. Holden was wrapping up his conversation, so everyone started saying their various farewells.
Talk to you later.
See you later, Cove. We gotta do this again sometime. Yeah, see ya. Yeah, sorry if my voice is like giving way. It's like gone. It's like shot. Cove turned to you and smiled slightly. Bye, Blue. I am hugging you. You stepped forward and spread your arms wide. Cove only had a moment to react before you encircled him in your arms. Cove took a second to return the hug, surprised. He leaned into you and held on. He then hovered nearby with a small smile on his face when it ended. His cheeks were slightly red, especially when he looked over and noticed that Derek had watched the whole thing. Derek smiled amusingly. Seriously, dude, we have to hang out later. I'm gonna miss you during school. He punched Cove's arm softly. Cove still rubbed the spot afterwards. Cove and his dad left soon after that. Your parents started cleaning up the house, and Elizabeth was still chatting with her friends on the phone. It was just you and Derek left. He elected to stay outside in front of the house to keep wait for his dad to pick him up. You decided to keep your guest company, although he was originally Cove's visitor. A light summer breeze blew through your hair, and Derek shifted his weight from foot to foot. Thanks for waiting with me. He kicked at the ground distractedly.
Well,
Dad's still gonna be a while, so you wanna go for a walk? Sounds great! One last trip for the day. Are you gonna confess after I literally blurted out that I kissed Cove? Because that would be awkward, Derek. The two of you walked down the street again, just wandering without a destination planned. It was a quiet stroll, too quiet for Derek being company. You turned to him when you had noticed he wasn't saying a word. That was unusual. Derek always had something he could chat about. You weren't sure if you should ask about it. Somehow you ended up at the old park near the beach. You glanced over to Derek once more, still expecting him to say something any second now. However, nothing came from him. In fact, now you noticed a frown creeping on his face. Derek smiled when he realized you were watching. At least, his mouth turned up. There wasn't anything that really felt happy in the expression. He turned away, and the smile fell off his face. His eyes stared instantly at the ground, and you raised an eyebrow. Is everything okay? I'm a little sad. With school starting back up again, it's gonna be harder to visit, and I'm gonna have homework and clubs, and practices, and everything else.
This sucks.
It sucks that we go to different schools. His face screwed up and his fists were closed tightly together. This was really concerning him. What if we don't have time? We'll make time. We can talk over the phone and have plans for the weekends. It'll be okay. Derek looked up at the sky. It was orange and purple with little wisps of clouds scattered around. A plane flew high with a jet stream trailing behind it. I hope we'll always be friends, no matter what. Even if we don't see each other for a long time, or even if we get really busy, I still hope. He cut himself off and met your eyes. There was something serious to him, sincerely worried that you fall out of friendship. Derek smiled, mostly to himself. He seemed a little more like the usual. Then for sure, we have to make the most of next year. And the year after that, and the year after that. He rambled on for a while about things. We'll just make the most out of every year. Right. You smiled and felt like your friendship was still strong. You didn't spend much longer at the park after that. Derek didn't want to miss his dad, so you both made your way back to your street. After Derek was back home, you decided to settle in for the night. Stretching your arms over your head, you noticed the living room and phone were free. He didn't confess, thank God! I'm calling Lee! You picked up the receiver and quickly punched in the familiar number while taking a seat on the couch. Soon enough, after explaining the situation to the housekeeper, Lee answered. Hey! Hey! Hi, Lee, can you talk? Definitely, we have to. My gosh, can you believe it's almost time for school to start? What happened to our summer? I can't even do her voice correctly right now. School starts first thing tomorrow for me.
Boo!
Ew! And I thought starting next week was bad enough. Enjoy your last week. Oh, I will. I hope you survive your first day. Me too. I need a good year. Ditto! And at least summer was nice while it lasted, right? We were busy. Yeah. Fondly, you thought of all the best memories you made this summer. Lee was there for some, but there were still many you hadn't filled her in on yet. He began to speak about... Oh my God! I went to a soiree at my mom's country club. There was lots of food, dancing, and people dressed up formally. Cool! Oh, I've been to one of those. They're cool, but how did it go for you? Oh, it was my day. No way! You asked him on a date? Like a date? Yeah? Oh! After laughing a bit, you dove into telling Lee everything about your night with Cove. You enjoyed sharing that memory with her. One more moment! I want more moments! We need more moments! I want to talk about these three. I want these three. Road trip. I went on vacation. Cove's parents ended up inviting my whole family on an RV road trip. Really? Whoa, that's awesome! It was a 3-day trip and we visited the Redwood National Forest. Lucky! What? Cove did wait! Start at the beginning! It took a while until you stopped laughing from Lee's reaction long enough to tell her every detail of the story. She excitedly squealed more than once. I can't believe you've been holding out on me with such a juicy story! Nothing really happened. Keep telling yourself that. You have to keep me updated on what happens next. It was hard to focus on what she was saying. Your face was probably red right now, just thinking about what happened. Spoke about Cove's house for dinner. One night, Cove's parents invited me over for dinner at their house for the first time. Mr. Holden made Mexican food. The meal was good. Mexican is yummy, so that's no surprise. What else happened? I got to name one of Cove's pet fish. What'd you pick? Flair. Wow, why doesn't Cove ask me to name one of his fish? He has a bunch, right? That had you bursting into laughter. You almost accidentally dropped the phone. She giggled in return. One more. One more. Just talk about everything to her. I remember the hottest day this summer. I could barely do anything and had to stay inside the entire afternoon. Cove said, well, he wrote it. He wrote it. We were playing Hangman, and that's what he picked for me to figure out. You heard her audibly gasp. That's such a move! What did you do? You filled her in as much as you were willing. She gratefully took in all the details. We're just gonna talk about everything, aren't we? We went to the library to work on assignments. What? Hey, I thought we were supposed to be talking about the good parts of summer. It was fun because I was hanging. Oh, that's cool. Hanging out with the boys must have saved the whole day. I think so too. We're literally going to talk about everything. I went with Cove to a birthday party. It was for a classmate we had, Miranda. Ooh, birthday parties are always fun. There was a bounce house, games, cake, and ice cream. She knows how to throw a party. I made Cove wear one of the funny hats. And I bet he loved every minute of it. After that, you both burst into laughter. We're literally going to talk about everything. That was the day Mom and Ma took me and Elizabeth on a big supply shopping trip. What made it so memorable? Lee chuckled, but you could hear the curiosity in her voice. I went surfing with Cove later. Oh, that's super cool! It was so fun. The end to speak about. There's literally only one. Oh, one time Cove's mom had me and Cove go with her on this ride all over town. Why'd she do that? Just 'cause? Sort of. We got caught in a sun shower and she wanted to help us air dry, and it kept going on from there. We went to a movie. It was a ghost horror movie and it was actually fun to watch. Really? What happened in it? You took a little time to explain to her the events of the film. She listened, very entertained. What was your big highlight of the summer, Lee? Talking to you is always the best part of my summer. Even though it was a phone call, you knew Lee was winking at you. Good, I'm glad you picked the right answer. That had Lee laughing hard for a few moments. All right, okay. So the high point for me was when I took that trip with my parents to Europe. That was amazing. You and Lee continued over the phone over your adventures until you were both yawning to each other over the phone. Before you go, there's one other thing. I kissed Cove today. There was a pause of silence. Knowing your cousin, you decided to pull your ear away from the phone. As expected, a screech loud enough for you to still make out clearly from a distance cracked through the speaker. I am going to try to recreate said sound. Please turn down your volume. This may be a little loud. I'm going to try to be heard. When you felt safe, you pulled the phone back against your head. Lee was still gushing to herself, although a little less loudly. Why didn't you say so sooner? He had to have kissed you back, right? You two are the most perfectly perfect pair ever! Tell me, please! You used the precious little time you had left to try filling her in as best you were capable of in that moment. But as soon as the approach of curfew became too much for you to ignore, despite how excited you both were, at that you decided it was time to say goodbye for now. You did have school to wake up for in the morning. Bye, Lee. Bye. Night, Blue. Talk to you later. You left the phone on the side table for now. Looking at the clock on the wall, you saw that there was only about 10 minutes until your moms would be insisting you had to go to bed so you could get rested enough for school. You stretched your legs out on the couch and sighed in defeat, watching the minute hand change 1 minute closer to bedtime. You rearranged yourself, feeling restless. Looked out the window. Startled initially, you spotted a figure on the hills. It was Cove. When the surprise faded, you realized it wasn't really too much of a shock at all. It was exactly something Cove would do. I'm going to go see him! Sprinting, you reached the front door in record time. You didn't think you'd see Cove again that day. You had to go to him. When you arrived, you noticed how many fireflies were out that night. They drifted along lazily, barely minding your presence as you waded through to reach the top of the hill. Cove turned towards you as you approached and noticed right away that Cove looked happy to see you. Hey! You had a bounce in your step. You weren't sure how long you'd get before your mom's roped you back inside for bed. Hey! You're starting strong! Out late on the first day of school night. School night of the year. Chuckling, Cove crossed his arms. Seriously, what are you doing out here?
Nothing.
Nothing? Not really. He shrugged, seemingly unhappy with his own answer. You stared at him, waiting for him to continue. Well, I guess I was kind of feeling weird about stuff, so I'm getting some fresh air before bed. I know how you feel. It's hard to stay still. Tomorrow's gonna be the start of a new year. At the mention of school, a small noise escaped him. Cove let himself fall back on his butt and then all the way down, so he was lying on his back. He looked up at the sky. I'm sitting on your chest. He had made himself a pretty available seat with the way he was laid out, and you plopped yourself square on the middle of his torso. Blue! He jolted up in surprise, although he couldn't get far with you on top of him. He plopped right back into the grass. With a huff, he just gave up on being shocked. Fine. You snickered in a self-satisfied way. Da-da-da-dots! Da-da-dots! He had been lost in thought or was possibly waiting for you to situate yourself, but he started speaking unprompted again.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry for being kind of awkward when my mom was leaving. Surprised, you stared at him for a moment. You weren't expecting that. I just wanted you to know I talked to my dad about how I felt and things, and it's okay now. You were genuinely glad to hear that, and it brought a small smile to your face, but your thoughts quickly wandered back to the first day you met Mr. Holden. Did his dad confess about that? From the way Cove talked, you guessed he hadn't. So there was more Cove and his dad to talk about, but it was a relief to know that they had made a start. Now was not a good time to bring up what you were thinking, though. You could wait longer to say it. It was almost unbelievable how much of an impact he made on your life just by moving in next door. You couldn't even imagine what your days might have looked like in a world where you hadn't met him. Cove glanced back at you, waiting for a response. You had no idea what to say. Then, still without a word from you, Cove shook his head strongly. What? It's you. Huh? He snickered before answering. He looked thoroughly amused with your reaction. That's what you do all the time, so I'm being you. You do it all the time, too! There was no response that you could give, but you noticed Cove smiling softly at you. He wasn't trying to be mean with it. Honestly, there weren't many people you could think of who could tease you about something like that. Returning his smile, you realized there was no denying that you two have been around each other for a long time. Cove broke the quiet before it could fully settle.
See you tomorrow.
Hey, I'll see you tomorrow. Yeah, see you then. With a final wave, Cove headed for home, but you stayed there a few minutes longer. Your mind kept going back to his simple statement, see you tomorrow. No matter how much was changing around you, there were some things in your life that always seemed to remain true. The hill felt warm to you that night. Before you knew it, you were getting comfortable under the covers in your room. Your mind couldn't help but still be buzzing with thoughts of the future. It was hard not to think about Cove. There hadn't been enough time to really figure it all out what happened between you two. You felt excited. There was little doubt in your mind that things were moving forward, and you couldn't wait to find out what changes were waiting for you on the horizon. Slowly, your eyes grew heavy as you drifted off to sleep, your mind spinning with wistful thoughts. No matter what happened next, you could only hope you would make the most of it. You were ensnared in a dream when a noise from outside the world jolted you. The light clattered continued. Now you were more alert. You could distinguish it as a tapping sound, quiet, slow, but persistent. Each beat was like being poked. You couldn't ignore it. You lifted your head from the pillow and looked for the source. Not much work was needed to puzzle it out. It was from the window. With that, you knew exactly what it was. From the color of light filtering in your room, it was too early for anyone to be awake, including the sun. It had barely hauled itself over the horizon, but that didn't stop some people, it seemed. You sat up in bed and opened the window wide. Cool air, not warmed by the day, tickled your face as it pushed into your room. And just as you expected, there was your neighbor crouching on your windowsill. He was fully dressed, though not for school. Oh, baby boy! Oh, look at the baby boy. Oh my goodness, Cove. He was wearing a wetsuit and a shy smile. Hi, Blue. You stared back, blinking. So, technically, we won't be back at school for a few more hours. His voice was delicate yet deliberate, with each word a careful explanation. Classes haven't started yet, so do you want to hit the beach with me one last time before summer? You're so cool. You're so cute! The smile widened affectionately. You rushed to get changed into something suitable while Cove climbed back down to ground level. Your limbs, still half asleep, struggled somewhat as you attempted to coordinate them into a swimsuit, but you got there in the end. Soon you were tiptoeing out your front door, clutching a towel. Cove was already there to greet you. Your eyes met. Cove's gaze darted to your destination, back to you. You checked the door was closed and gave him a thumbs up. The two of you leapt into action. Wordlessly, you began to run down the familiar path ahead, Cove beside you. The thrill of your illicit outing made you want to laugh. Not that you dared. If anyone in your family looked out and saw you, then your summer would be back to being over. One glance at Cove told you he was exactly the same, holding back snickers for fear of being heard or caught. The towel streamed out from under your arm like a cape. You were running so fast downhill that simply keeping your balance and not tumbling was a real threat. It wasn't just enough of one to make you slow your pace. For every step you took, the beach was a little closer and the day a little brighter. What lay ahead of you would arrive, and you were happy to meet it. And there we go, everybody. That is the end of Step 2. Thank you all so much for joining me. This is a long episode, but thank you guys so much for joining me. Thank you for being along on this journey, and I cannot wait for us to see Step 3 and enjoy that together. I will catch you all on the flip side, and see you, everybody.